Hello, my name is Daniel Gomes, and this is my oral presentation for my Police Foundations course at Durham College. Today I will be talking about an issue that I feel is very serious and is a growing issue worldwide. That is police brutality and the constant fight between police and civilians. There are many factors causing this, such as bad police officers that completely stray from the procedures that they are taught, are meant to follow and lead them to make sometimes violent and questionable decisions. The negative influence of media and internet, which create a negative image on authority and police, which causes people to rebel. Finally, the public's lack of understanding of law and the use of force model. The procedures, which is what police follow to react properly and to certain threats and situations, which I will be explaining. Use of force model in a very linear, simpler way. The first stage is if an individual is not responding to commands, verbal commands or even physical commands. Maybe he is demonstrating some dangerous cues. The way to deal with this is balance displacement, escort him to a different position, assist from another officer, or more verbal and physical commands to present more police presence. The second stage would be if someone is pulling from an officer, refusing to move, dead weight. This would be solved by striking muscle groups, takedowns, joint manipulation, or pressure points, more physical effort to move the individual. The third part is if the individual starts wrestling with the officer, fighting back with violence. The only way to fight this is striking, punching, kicking, electrical devices to subdue the individual without hurting him too much. The fourth stage is if he's striking or hitting the officer extremely violently. This is dealt with baton techniques on the leg or the arm to disable the individual. And the final one is if an individual is presenting a deadly threat to you or the people around you with a gun, knife, anything deadly. The only way to deal with this is with deadly force. There are other factors for the use of force models, such as the amount of force that should be used, or techniques themselves that change if an officer is dealing with a pregnant woman, mentally ill, or just dealing with the opposite sex of a search. This must be dealt with much more carefully. An example is an officer throwing a man off a wheelchair in Florida. This is a perfect example of use of excessive force, and the force is completely unreasonable that was used. The amount of force that was used for someone who can't even walk is ridiculous. Many officers have killed mentally ill people due to their unpredictability, but this can be dealt with much more communication and much more patience. Although mentally ill people can be dangerous in many situations, but unfortunately, officers turn to violence much too quickly. Procedures that adapt to different situations, such as an individual who can't speak English, this would require a different approach, such as a translator or anyone who can speak the language, instead of basically apprehending the stressed individual. Communication should always be used to the fullest. There shouldn't be any sort of force unless a crime has been committed clearly. Resolving the situation peacefully without any violence should always be an officer's top priority. But not every situation can be dealt this way. There will always be someone who will resist, and in these cases, many officers let their emotions get the best of them, which result in sloppy or violent apprehension techniques, which many times can cause injury or even death of a suspect or individual. But there is mixed martial arts that are created for submitting, control, and safely restraining an individual through chokeholds to temporarily disable an opponent, although this should be avoided due to the slight risk of the choke. Pressure points, which is very effective, which can be used to take advantage of a person's weak points. Performing one of these makes a person completely controlled by the officer. These pressure points cause so much pain, no one can move by themselves. And through all this pain, there is very small chance of permanent injury. Of course, according to the amount of force done. And finally, the takedowns, which use someone's own weight against them and throw them to the ground. Although you are throwing an individual to the ground, there's a very small chance of injury because many of these techniques are not head first, which many of the officers, when they are taking down a suspect, they usually go head first, unfortunately. These mixed martial arts are here to teach police officers safer ways to take down suspects. And many of the mixed martial arts are called Judo, Mixed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Aikido. And now my father will be demonstrating some of these techniques for you. These are some mixed martial arts techniques that police officers can use in certain situations. Thank you. But police officers' mental health must be extremely good. I understand we are all human, but officers carry an authority above civilians. They are to uphold the law and protect the public, which requires them to make quick and logical decisions. And to do this, mental health is very important. Just one example of someone whose mental health may not be up to par with officers is an Ontario officer called Christopher LeBlanche, who is in a video taking 20-year-old Tanny Curry to his cell when suddenly the officer visually throws the 20-year-old against glass, breaking it, and he viciously does it, visually angry. The force required to break the glass is not slim, and the side difference between these two are great. The officer presses Tanner against the wall or broken window and is visibly yelling in his ear, clearly furious. This is extremely unprofessional. A proud, fully careered officer should not let anyone get the best of him because every officer's actions represent the entire force, let alone letting a 20-year-old or a younger person get the best of him. Someone who is quick-tempered is quickly possible to hurt somebody without a logical reason. This is just one situation where an officer is acting beyond his limits. There are many situations where police officers will get too emotional and not think logical. The fact that officers have weapons puts even more emphasis on mental health. I believe an officer should be kind yet assertive and not letting negative words affect his behavior or actions. To always look for a peaceful solution and be mentally stable. But officers' attitude is not the only thing about mental health, but there's something called post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is an anxiety disorder that can develop by experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. Therefore, is a very common illness which affects many officers due to some of the traumatic situations they encounter every day, such as murder scenes, suicides, and other violent situations. This severely affects your mental health, causing thoughts of, it's all my fault, I need to stay alert and protect myself at all times. Some physical sensations are stomach aches, headaches, muscle tension, irritability, feeling amped up, feeling detached from one's body. Some emotions are sadness, anger, shame, guilt, anxiety, and fear. Many police forces now have realized this and have put steps to assuring their police are mentally stable. The police force in Edmonton, for example, were praised for their amazing approach. Some of the things they did were less physical training on use of force and more non-physical interventions such as verbal communication, interpersonal skills, de-escalation, and other calming techniques in their use of force training. Another thing is establishing standards for mental illness. Better training for mental illness so people can understand more thoroughly how to deal with them and so they can comprehend their behavior. If more police forces around the world followed them, I believe things would improve greatly. If there are more strict rules for officers who prove they are mentally unstable and are shown using excessive force should be kicked from the force immediately or go through a mental evaluation. A very serious one. A Durham officer named Craig Willis was fired after his third excessive force charge, which I believe went way farther than reasonable. Also, mental health professionals should be available to officers at all times. Some officers don't get fired from just showing them violently attack the suspect. And this affects the police image and affects the public's view on police. Although there are many strategies called community policing which create a more positive image for police officers, which is just creating basic conversations with people in the local area, creating relationships with local businesses, or just doing peaceful policing around the area. This greatly improves the image of police. At the end of the day, resisting an officer violently or even verbally most likely will not end well for an individual. But I believe this is not entirely their fault, because I believe they are negatively influenced by the news and media and create a negative image on authority and police officers in general, and create a hostile and violent nature between civilians and police, causing them to resist and become more violent when encountered with police. There have been many riots and public views about injustice on police brutality, but destruction and violence never solved anything, and will never bring justice. People must look for a more diplomatic solution, and the news does not help very much, since they seem to focus more on the negative aspects of the situation for the ratings. But news is not the only media that affects this, as music and video games also affect the image of police, as many hip-hop songs as F the Police and Grand Theft Auto, the video game, has you shoot many police officers, what I see hurts the image quite a bit. I understand that many police reports or news reports that police are stepping outside their boundaries is helping bring them to justice, but I feel like the news is promoting them more for ratings rather than justice, and this hurts society more than it helps. The internet may as well be way worse, just due to the sheer size of the internet compared to the news. This is horrible for the public because many people are weak-minded and are easily brainwashed. This needs to be dealt with before many more casualties become apparent. There needs to be law and order, or else society would just be in chaos. Which is why I believe instead of using this technology for negative influence, use it to educate about law and the good police officers out there. To have more strict rules against anti-police websites and anti-police content and comments and forums. Through this, I can see police and civilians violence would decrease. With education, less hateful people, there will be much more relationships between public and police, and in the end, greatly lower injuries, casualties, and any sort of negative interaction with police officers, or even lower crime. Stricter rules and higher hiring specifications for the police force would also help this. When it comes to mental health and being professional, it should always be a top requirement for a police officer. More effective techniques with MMA taking down suspects will greatly lower the injuries and deaths of many police encounters. This is my oral presentation, and thank you.